I want to tell you what happened in the Strait of Hormuz in the last 24 hours. Not the version that the American government is presenting, not the version that Iranian state media is presenting, the version that the specific facts, placed in sequence, actually tell you. On Sunday, Trump announced Operation Project Freedom. The United States military would begin guiding ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Two US flagged vessels would be the first to transit under American naval escort. The operation involved guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft, and 15,000 service members. Iran said this was a violation of the ceasefire. On Monday, as the first two commercial vessels were escorted through the strait under Operation Project Freedom, Iran launched a barrage of missiles, attack drones, and small boats at the American naval vessels. Trump said US forces destroyed 7 or 8 Iranian small boats during the encounter. US Navy destroyers had to fend off a sustained barrage to protect the two ships transiting. On the same day, Iran launched missile and drone attacks on the United Arab Emirates. For the second consecutive day, the UAE has partially closed its airspace. A major fire broke out at the Fujairah oil industry zone after Iranian drones attacked the facility. Defense Secretary Hegseth said the ceasefire certainly holds. He called Project Freedom a totally separate and temporary operation. Iran's IRGC said any ships attempting to transit the strait will face serious risks, and violating vessels will be stopped with force. America sank 7 Iranian boats. Iran fired on US Navy ships. The UAE was attacked twice in 2 days. And Hegseth said the ceasefire holds. I want to explain why all of those things can be simultaneously true and what it means for the 9 days before the Beijing summit, what Operation Project Freedom actually is. Let me be precise about what America launched on Sunday, because the framing matters for understanding everything that followed. Operation Project Freedom is not a military offensive, it is a maritime assertion. America is claiming the authority to determine which ships transit the Strait of Hormuz and under what conditions. It is saying, we will guide ships through the strait, we will provide naval protection for those transits, and any interference with those transits will be met with force. Iran has been saying since March 4th that it controls traffic through the strait. The IRGC unveiled a new map declaring Iranian military control over a wide area on either side of Hormuz. Iran's parliament is moving to legislate a new maritime regime for the strait. Iran has been charging over $1 million per ship for selective passage. Iran's position is we determine who passes. Two authorities, one strait, 33 kilometers of water, both America and Iran claiming exclusive control over who gets through. Operation Project Freedom is the moment that contradiction became kinetic. America did not just assert navigational authority, America sent ships through. Iran did not just assert navigational authority, Iran fired at the ships America was protecting. 7 Iranian small boats are at the bottom of the Strait of Hormuz right now. Whatever the ceasefire means after that, it does not mean what it meant on Sunday morning. Why Hegseth saying ceasefire holds is the most revealing statement of the day. Defense Secretary Hegseth went on television and said the ceasefire certainly holds. He called Project Freedom totally separate from the ceasefire framework. I want to explain why this specific framing is analytically important, not as a criticism of Hegseth's honesty, but as an explanation of the diplomatic trap America has walked into. The ceasefire of April 8th was agreed on the understanding that both sides would pause active hostilities. America has been maintaining that it honored the ceasefire because it has not resumed the bombing campaign inside Iran that characterized the first 40 days. Iran has been maintaining that America violated the ceasefire by continuing the naval blockade of Iranian ports, boarding Iranian vessels, turning back Iranian ships, preventing Iran's oil from reaching customers. Now, America has sent armed naval vessels into the strait itself. Iran fired on those vessels. America sank Iranian boats. The UAE was attacked. Hegseth is technically correct that America has not resumed the 40-day bombing campaign. He is technically correct that the exchange of fire in the strait can be characterized as a separate operational context from the ceasefire's original framework. Both of those technical arguments are legally and procedurally defensible, but the families of the 15,000
American service members now operating in the Strait of Hormuz do not experience technical arguments. They experience whether their loved ones are being fired at. And yesterday they were. The ceasefire that ordinary Americans understood as the shooting has stopped is no longer that ceasefire. Whatever document exists, whatever technical framework Hegseth is referencing, the operational reality is Iran fired on American naval vessels. America destroyed Iranian boats. The UAE was attacked with missiles and drones. That is not a ceasefire in any sense that the American public understood the word to mean. And your comment section told me who your audience is. USA people don't want war, don't want Israel. 46 likes. As an American who just wants peace, these are the people watching this channel. They deserve to understand that the ceasefire they were told had held is now producing fire exchanges in the Strait and drone attacks on the UAE. What IRGC flying to Beijing today means on the same day that Iran fired on U.S. Navy ships in Hormuz and attacked the UAE for the second consecutive day, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi flew to Beijing to meet Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. I want to hold those two facts together because their simultaneous occurrence tells you something important about Iran's strategy that is being completely lost in the coverage. Iran is fighting in Hormuz and diplomating in Beijing on the same day, not alternately, simultaneously. The IRGC is launching missiles at American destroyers while Araghchi is boarding a plane to the Chinese capital to meet China's top diplomat. This is not contradiction. This is the dual track strategy that Iran has been executing since February 28th. The military track and the diplomatic track running simultaneously, each serving the other. The military track creates pressure. The diplomatic track offers an exit from that pressure on Iran's terms. And the party that holds the key to the exit, China, which buys 90% of Iran's oil and which Treasury Secretary Bessent publicly called on to step up with diplomacy and get the Iranians to open the Strait, is the country Araghchi is visiting today. Bessent said on Fox News that China is funding the largest state sponsor of terrorism by purchasing Iranian oil. In the same statement, he called on China to use its leverage over Iran to help reopen the strait. Think about that combination for a moment. America is accusing China of funding terrorism and asking that same China to apply diplomatic pressure on Iran. That is not a coherent strategy. That is a desperate appeal to the party America just publicly attacked. China's response will be shaped by what Araghchi tells Wang Yi today. And what Araghchi tells Wang Yi today will be shaped by the fact that Iran fired on American destroyers this morning and is still standing. The military track and the diplomatic track are not separate, they are integrated. And Iran has been integrating them more effectively than America has understood. What S&P Global's warning means for American families, I want to address the economic dimension directly because your audience feels this every day and the full picture is not being reported clearly. S&P Global Energy warned this week that even after the Strait of Hormuz reopens, it will take an additional 7 months at minimum to fully restore upstream production. The energy crisis could stretch into 2027. The longer the strait remains closed, the more likely the supply crisis extends into late 2026 and into 2027, S&P said. S&P, let me translate that for the American families who are paying $4.45 per gallon at the pump. Even if a deal is reached tomorrow, even if Hormuz is declared open the day after the Beijing summit, the economic consequences of this conflict will be felt by American consumers through 2026 and potentially into 2027. Spirit Airlines shut down, the first major American airline in 25 years. Fuel costs cited as a contributing factor, and now American destroyers are sinking Iranian boats in Hormuz. The ceasefire, to whatever extent it existed, is being tested in a way that makes a diplomatic resolution harder, not easier. Every additional day of military engagement in the Strait is another day that the reopening is delayed. Another day that the S&P 2027 estimate becomes more likely rather than less. Another day that American families pay $4.45 at the pump. The families watching this channel, the Americans who commented, USA people don't want war, they are paying for this conflict every day at every gas station in America. And the conflict just escalated. The 9 days before Beijing, what they now look like, the Beijing summit, is 9 days away. May 14th and 15th. And everything that happened in the last 24 hours has changed what that summit means. Before yesterday, the summit was the venue where Trump and Xi would discuss the diplomatic path to a Hormuz resolution, a deal framework, a sequence, a mechanism for the nuclear question. After yesterday, the summit is the venue where Trump arrives, having sunk Iranian boats in Hormuz, where IRGC has just met Wang Yi and given China Iran's full updated position on the escalation, and where Xi will be in the position of the most informed and least pressured party in the room. Besant told Xi to step up with diplomacy. Xi has Arakchi in Beijing today. Xi will know what Iran's response to Project Freedom is, what Iran's updated terms are, and what China is willing to leverage. Trump will arrive having called China a terrorism funder in the same breath as asking for China's diplomatic help. That is the position America is in 9 days before the most important summit of this presidency on the Iran question. 7 boats sunk. UAE attacked twice. Arakchi in Beijing. Ceasefire holding in the technical sense while destroyers fend off missiles in the Strait. Watch whether any deal emerges from Arakchi's Beijing meeting before the summit. Watch the oil price. If it drops before May 14th, something was agreed in Beijing before Trump landed. If it stays above $100, the summit will have to produce what Arakchi could not. The ceasefire, in the sense that American families understood it, is over. What replaces it will be decided in Beijing, and Iran has made sure China is the best informed party in that room.